This is not working.
Is it the right arrow? There's music playing. So they can hear it. So we're live, but there's music playing. So, but I think it's the music one.
All right, good afternoon. I'm Keith Lovan. I'm here with Chase Wright from Strand Associates. I am the project engineer for the city of Lexington, and today we're going to talk about completing the legacy, and that's the Legacy Trail. Trails in Lexington, like other parts of the country, are an important part of the community's infrastructure. And starting in 1999, Lexington started building numerous trails within the city. At the time, we were just building 1 or 2 mile trails just to be able to get them into neighborhoods. They didn't really connect to anything, and they were generally just areas where we felt like that they would be used, and we had developed a plan to where we would be able to connect them later down, later in the our process of building this infrastructure. So to date, Lexington has 39 miles of trail at a total investment of over $75 million. And that's just happened in the last 20 years. But it's definitely been, we can definitely show how the impact of the Legacy Trail has had on the city of Lexington and our biking and walking environment. It has definitely been a game changer, and we are going to talk about the Legacy Trail and how it started, and the impact it's had on Lexington, and then what it's done for the rest of Fayette County. Since 2009, Lexington has seen a 5-fold increase in the number of shared use miles and a 4-fold increase in the number of bike lanes. We have also become a bicycle friendly city, and we have actually changed the attitudes for building these trails and how people accept them, and how they actually are more supportive, and actually have increased the funding over the years because people are seeing the benefits and are really enjoying them. What we're showing there on the slide is our downtown area and how we are going to be creating a loop and a 22-mile contiguous bike system. The Legacy Trail is on the northern part of the downtown area, and it connects to the Kentucky Horse Park. This 22-mile loop with the Town Branch and Legacy Trail connectors is supposed to be finished by 2022. Well, overview of the trail. We actually started the design in 2008. We had a construction completion date of 2010, September 2010, so we only had 23 months to get the project started. The impetus for the Legacy Trail was in 2010, Lexington was going to host the World Equestrian event, which is an international, World Equestrian Games, which is an international equestrian event that we started playing in our back. I don't know if someone from KYTC can help out, or can folks still hear? Well, yeah, but it's not us doing it. Okay.
It's the introduction music. I'm sorry to cut in. We're trying to work on it. Something happened when you switched back to the introduction and then back to your slides. We're working on it. We're trying to figure it out.
Okay.
Just let us know when it's off.
All right, recommendation just to plow on and talk louder. The Legacy Trail, we started the design in 2008 with a completion date of September 2010, which was the date of the World Equestrian Games. We were able to design, do a feasibility study, obtain all the right-of-way, obtain all the necessary federal, local, and state permits, and build the trail, which was 8 miles, which included 7 bridges and 14,000 square feet of retaining wall, all within that time period. We actually started the process with a feasibility study, which was conducted in 2008. We had funding from a third party as part of the World Equestrian Games. Knight Ridder Foundation wanted to have a couple of legacy projects to help support and bring recognition to the World Equestrian Games. So there was a public opinion poll taken, and they asked the citizens of Lexington what they would like to see. So 2 projects came out of that proposal. One of them was a Legacy Trail, and the other was a park on the east end of Lexington. So as we started doing research and stuff, we soon discovered that the park on the east end was actually the home of Isaac Murphy. And then we also knew that Isaac Murphy was buried at the Kentucky Horse Park. And Isaac Murphy was a African-American jockey He is the winningest jockey, and he won 3 Kentucky Derbies back in the early 1900s. So he was a well-known jockey, and so we were able to connect where he lived with where he is buried, and so that's sort of the impetus for naming the project the Legacy Trail. The Legacy Trail has a lot of important aspects about it. It's not your typical trail. We actually had to go cross-country. There was no defined alignment, so I guess that was a good thing and a bad thing. We were not restrained on where we wanted to put it, but we also had to, there was a lot of design that had to be considered. We wanted to, it was through a rural area, we wanted to take advantage of all of the natural limestone in central Kentucky. We wanted to take advantage of the landscape, but we also wanted to make it a signature trail. This was going to be our longest trail, and it was going to be, we knew the impetus for getting more projects similar to this. So there was a lot of thought going into the project. We incorporated a lot of natural features. We had a Cane Run Creek that runs north-south from Lexington to Georgetown. So we wanted to take advantage of that. And plus it was going through the University of Kentucky's Equestrian Farm, which is a research facility. And so we wanted to highlight that. So we did that in a number of ways. We included a lot of interpretive signs on the Legacy Trail, and we also included a lot of public art. All of that was funded through various agencies, and I guess our most significant funding was through the stimulus funds or ARA funds back in 2010. Like I said, it is our longest trail and it is our most used trail. We average over 60,000 cyclists per year. We estimate that we have over 100,000 users per year because there are a tremendous amount of walkers that use this trail. So we are very pleased with the amount of people that are using the trail, and the number of events that are happening on the trail are pretty much every weekend or at least every other weekend. So it's a heavily used project. I'm going to go ahead and talk about how we are building the third phase of the project, which is the downtown portion. And that is the section of trail that goes from 5th Street at Jefferson to the Isaac Murphy project. This was the downtown portion, which is also the most difficult portion of the project because it was through downtown streets, which had very limited right-of-way, and it was in the urban area. Unfortunately, we weren't able to acquire any right-of-way because we were working within existing street infrastructure. So we knew what our destination was. We just didn't know how we were going to get there. So we had a number of public meetings. We had 3 alignments, actually 4 alignments picked out. And through the public input process, we were able to come up with our final alignment, which is shown here in blue. It's worked out to be very good alignment. It goes through Transylvania University's campus and through also a residential area that has actually already turned around. There's a number of coffee shops and donut shops that have opened up since we announced this project. I'm going to turn it over to Chase, and he's going to talk about the designing solutions.
Hello. So my name is Chase Wright. I'm project manager with Strand Associates, and we've been working on the project since we were selected in 2014. So it's been a little while, and we're glad to see it be completed. And so I'm going to discuss design solutions in the urban environment. And so one of the primary challenges that we had, the first 2 pictures on the left are of the Legacy Trail. And when people think of the Legacy Trail, it's through the rural environment. This project, we designed the first 2 segments there that were completed, as Keith mentioned, in 2010. But that's what people think of when they think of the Legacy Trail. The pictures on the right are the 3rd and 4th Street corridor, and as Keith mentioned, very constrained buildings, right-of-way, utilities, number of conflict points. There's a lot of competing interest along the corridor. And so one of the biggest challenges that we had as a design team is how do you take the perception of what the Legacy Trail, the perception the public has about taking that Legacy Trail through downtown with the realities of the urban corridor. So the first really kind of big decision is that was looked at was what desired facility type. And before we were on board, the public, and there was a stakeholder committee that would continue to stay engaged between the time the first segments were complete and the time this project started. So it's had tremendous public support, and they wanted it to be special. And so they were looking at a relatively new concept in 2014 about a separated bike lane or a cycle track. And so this concept that's shown at the top right is also shown in a rendering that basically utilizes existing on-street parking for a bicycle facility, a 2-way bike facility next to a 2-way road. And then Second Sunday is a biking event that happens in October. And so that event in 2014 actually took the route of the Legacy Trail, the selected route, and the help of officers and volunteers, coned off a section and where people could kind of see what a separated bicycle facility would look like. Obviously, it doesn't have the number of conflicts that you would normally have, but people could kind of experience it. And the public really liked it. They really wanted it to be special. So the first kind of step as we were looking at scoping with the city is we need to do a case study evaluation. There wasn't many of these facilities, and so we wanted to get a better feel for how they operate. What are some of the concerns and as well as successes with them. And so People for Bikes had an inventory. And so there was 210 separated bike lanes, whether 1-way or 2-way, throughout the country at this time. But only 6 were really even comparable to the project that we had. And so we had Washington, D.C., Indianapolis, Seattle, and Louisville had one planned at the time. And so what we did is we contacted engineers and planners from each of these cities to be part of the process. We wanted to just talk with them and understand what their thoughts were, understand how many miles they had. And you can see from the graphic is that it's a very low number of actual facilities that they had as part of their overall plan. And the summary findings we had in March of 2015 was that the main goals were to minimize conflicts, and a couple of project highlights. The Seattle Broadway project has streetcars running down the center of the roadway, and they had an issue with cyclists hitting those rails at acute angles, and it was causing accidents. And so the purpose of putting the separated bicycle facility on one side allowed cyclists to make their turns at intersections and hit it more perpendicularly, so that it was actually a safety benefit to utilize the facility. Louisville, Keith and I and Scott Thompson and maybe a few others from Lexington actually went up when Louisville was considering one along Lexington Road. And I don't actually believe that segment got built the way it was originally envisioned, but basically a big portion of it didn't have conflict points because it had a cemetery on one side. And the primary concern is the wrong way cyclist. You basically have a 2-way bike road next to a 2-way regular road. And so those conflicts can emerge. And the keys to success that we heard over from really everyone that we talked with were eliminate turn conflicts. You need a significant number of users on the facility to be successful. You got to educate, you got to monitor and adapt. And so based on what we found through the case study evaluation in March of 2015, the project team recommended that this is not really the solution for the project. And after that, in May, the FHWA released some guidance on separated bike lanes, and it basically affirmed the findings that the project team had. And it's a great guidance if you're looking at this type of facility to use. So public engagement, the first segments of the project had significant public engagement. Some of the meetings had over 300 attendees, and this portion of the project was no different. We had two public meetings, large public meetings, over 100 attendees. We had a number of one-on-one meetings with property owners that were directly impacted. Did that for a 3-day period, and then we had a very involved stakeholder committee. And so this public engagement was really important as we're going through neighborhoods to kind of understand, and there's real impact with the project. The project takes on street parking, which is very significant in the downtown area when there's a lot of times not driveways. And so we needed to really understand their concerns as well as the benefits of the project. So how do we develop special design features? You know, a lot of people had their hearts on basically a dedicated facility that was off-road. And so we looked at using a green bike lane. This will be, I guess, next week when the green gets completely put down. This will be the longest stretch of green bike lane in the state. Over a mile of solid green bike lanes. We looked at special intersection treatments. So the main corridor itself is very constrained, but there's public property at some of the intersections where we can do pocket parks, and then there's some wide right of way in a couple instances on Elm Tree where we can look at doing bump outs to actually fit in some seating. And so that was an important consideration. Carrying on the theme of using interpretive signs, raised intersections. We utilized the Legacy Trail medallion in the pavement to just, again, help brand the corridor as we went through. So the green bike lanes, first and foremost, you need approval. So they aren't currently in the MUTCD, but there is interim approval. There's only 3 communities in the state that have the ability to go ahead and put green on right now, and that's Lexington, Louisville, and now the city of Frankfort. And so if you would like to use green, you have to follow a process, and you just basically need to request the ability to do it. More than likely, it'll be in the next edition of the MUTCD, but still something that needs to be done. Next is cost. You're looking at painting solid 12 feet across the width of there, so it's a significant investment. So with that, you want it to be very durable. With some of these pavement types, friction becomes an issue. So the first thing we looked at is what kind of guidance is out there. And Oklahoma DOT had done a study or done some research on different applications. So we first utilized that. And the bottom image of the brochure there is in Norman, Oklahoma, college town, that has colorized pavement demarcation. And so this is really the first application of colorized pavement demarcation that would be in the state of Kentucky. So we wanted to learn more about it. And the next picture is a city in Washington State. And so we contacted the engineer with the city, and we wanted to learn a little bit more about the green bike lanes. And at the time that I spoke with her, she indicated that they've been in the ground 8 or 9 years. And so I asked her, kind of what complaints they had. The only complaint that she cited was that the road cyclist noted that there's enough friction, enough traction there that it actually slows down some cyclists. And so that's really the only complaints that they've heard. So it actually has a higher coefficient of friction than standard pavement. So it kind of checks that box. So after we had this, the next step was we'd like to see some test applications in Lexington. So we arranged a series of test applications. On the left side is the applications being put down. So what is colorized pavement demarcation actually? So it's basically very similar to high friction surfacing that the cabinet does now along curves, just with a different aggregate. So you take the epoxy goes down, and then they take recycled colored glass beads. They're green, and they basically embed them in the epoxy. And the nice thing about it is when the top wears off, the bottom is embedded and protected, and so the color still shows through. And that's what the engineer from Washington State indicated, that after 9 years, it still had its color. So the graphic, so this is just to give you a little bit of perspective. This is on Limestone Street. If you aren't familiar with Lexington, it's the main road that connects. It's a major arterial that connects the University of Kentucky campus with downtown Lexington, right at Vine Street. There's a pretty significant downgrade with a heavy right turn volume, and with a heavy right turn volume, it's buses, because the transit center is just right to the right. And so the city wanted to implement a bike box in this location to help reduce the right hook potential for cyclists. Now the picture, this was done just over 3 years ago, three years and a month. And the picture on the right was taken this week. Now it is very discolored. We were hoping that we would have a pressure wash, because basically if you pressure wash, it'll remove the grit and the color will start shining back through. And so one of the things, if you look, it's maybe hard to see because the image is kind of small, but I personally was standing out there one day and I watched a cyclist coming down the hill, and a bus was making a right turn, and it was going to be a right hook, and it was going to be a very severe crash. And the cyclist hit her brakes. She may have been the first skid mark that's there, and she was able to have enough traction. She lost a lot of her tire, but she was able to stop in advance of the collision. And so it had enough friction that allowed her to stop in that setting. And so that was kind of just telling and very memorable for the fact that I was there. But again, the markings aren't really breaking up. You can see the thermoplastic that was put down at the same, some of that was put down at a similar time as what the green is and how it looks. So hopefully when we see that pressure wash, that green vibrancy will come back. So I guess I'll take a step back here. Just for cost comparison, utilizing the colorized pavement demarcation saved the project $250,000. Just from an order of magnitude, it was less than half the cost of thermoplastic, along with being more durable and having a higher coefficient of friction. And so just the amount of that we were putting down, this was a significant cost for the project, and something that saved the project over $250,000. So it's a pretty big win for the project. Raised intersection guidance. Again, there wasn't a lot of national guidance at the time, and so we looked at what other DOTs are doing. And so Delaware and South Carolina had guidance that was very similar on raised crossings. And so we took that guidance and met. Keith and I met with emergency services. They were initially a little bit apprehensive about the thought of a raised intersection for the project, but after reviewing the information with them and having those face-to-face meetings, they felt comfortable moving forward. And so basically, the details on the right are project details. The top is showing we utilize speed transition markings going up to the raised intersection. The raised intersections are a different paving material. We utilize concrete instead of the asphalt road, and then use colored pavement for the crosswalk markings. Now, when you use colored pavement, again, this is a time to go back to the MUTCD. The MUTCD, or FHWA, issues interpretations, and there's a lot of discussion on art and crosswalks, colored pavement, that they have some guidance on. And so if you're going to use some type of colored pavement, I recommend looking at that guidance, and it kind of gives you an idea of using colors that kind of mimic brick patterns if you're going to do that, or earth tones, just things that are more standard approaches. But there's a lot of guidance in there. But you still need the standardized markings that would mark a crosswalk with it, and ours have it. And the raised intersections have a parabolic transition to them, again, to help slow down vehicles approaching the raised intersections. So we utilized 2 raised intersections. There was so the project corridor has 2 schools on it. We have Transylvania University, and so the top pictures are the existing Transylvania University at Bourbon Avenue and 4th Street, as well as the final construction. And so Transy's recently continued to build dorms on one side, and they built parking facilities down Bourbon Avenue. So a number of students were going to be utilizing this facility every day. So we wanted to make the crossing, we want to improve the crossing for pedestrian safety, and also provide some traffic calming along the corridor, as well as just general aesthetic approval. The other crossing is at 4th and Jefferson, the bottom photos, and it's Johnson Avenue and 4th Street. And there's a pretty significant downgrade There's a middle school that accesses it with a pedestrian crossing there. And so what we utilized the school, kind of the school colors, black and kind of more of a reddish brick color at the top one, and have that for the school crossing to provide improved safety for pedestrians. Enhanced intersections. So one of the concerns, I guess I can take a step back, is the public in the neighborhood. This runs in through an area of Lexington that for the residents, it felt like that they may not have gotten the same level of attention as other areas of town and level of investment. And so it was really important that one of the things we heard during the public engagement, that they wanted as much level of investment. It was done in the first phases, which was about $1 million a mile. And so ultimately this section is looking at over, about double that of level of investment. And that was really important because they wanted to make sure that this corridor was special. So some of the enhanced intersections, the top left, this is on Elm Tree and 4th, and we were able to reduce the crossing distance and allow that space to allow seat walls, enhanced landscaping along that corridor. The bottom left, this is an area we actually acquired a little bit of right away, just right at the intersection from Transylvania University. And we have seat wall, a gateway monument, as well as the only mile marker through this segment. We have bike racks that match the bike rack configuration out of in the rural segment. We have flagpoles. So this was important. And another thing we heard is that early on in the planning is that the community likes to take this portion of the community here in this neighborhood. Community is very important, and so providing spaces for people to have conversations would be very welcome. And so we wanted to do something that the community would really get benefit out of. So as I mentioned, the biggest hurdle from a concern standpoint was how do you take on-street parking that's existing and make it to be bike lanes. We knew this was going to be a challenge, and we knew that there would be pushback for the project. So one of the early things, we worked with the city to identify a parking inventory. And this parking inventory would be conducted over multiple times on the weekdays. We'd get early in the morning to understand who's out there before 6 o'clock, who's out there midday, and who's out there in the evening, and then on the weekends. And so we wanted to see how parking demand changed over time and what it was really from a block to by block basis. And Keith and I took this information, and then we sat down with the one-on-one meetings over the 3-day time period. And the one-on-one meetings was very helpful to let people express their concerns directly and not necessarily in a group setting. So it allowed maybe people that wouldn't feel comfortable expressing that in a large group to express those concerns. But it also, if people got too upset, it allowed that to be a more controlled environment where we could listen to their concerns and then kind of take a step back and think about if there's any kind of design solutions to mitigate those concerns. 2 areas that we were successfully able, the city and the project team was able to work together to improve, is there was only one commercial loading zone along the corridor, 4th Street. And this section of 4th Street was too narrow. It was about 30 feet. And so there wasn't really anything we could do on street, but there was an alleyway nearby. And so we explored multiple alternatives about how this could be, how parking could be expanded, maybe even along the alley. And the city was able to work with the property owner directly and facilitate that need off-site. And so that was a success for the project. And then the photo on the right, it's kind of hard to tell. This is on 4th Street between MLK and Elm Tree. And this segment of 4th Street had a significant number of residents without driveways, and also had the Living Arts and Sciences Center, and that had a parking need on a daily basis. And we were in one of the one-on-one meetings, and we were meeting with a lady, and she worked late, and she got home at 1 o'clock in the morning, and she was really concerned about parking a block away and having to walk home every night when she got to work at 1 o'clock in the morning by herself. And so we were really the only way we could do this was expand the roadway, widen it, and acquire easements along the way for the sidewalk to be constructed, permanent easements. And so we met with the property owners on the opposite side, and they were supportive. They had some benefit of having parking on the opposite side of the street, but it's also a community, and they understood the concerns of their neighbors on the other side, and everybody was able to get on board and facilitate this segment of roadway widening. So the city made additional investment into the project, financial investment to be able to accommodate this. But this was a big success for those residents. So limestone curb, this is a National Registered Historic District. In fact, one of the deeds we had to trace back was actually signed by Henry Clay. So to kind of give you a perspective, this area is rich in history, and they have limestone curbs along the corridor, and that's a contributing element to the National Register Historic District, as well as the grass strip, the utility strip, is actually also a contributing element. So Keith and I, along with the state's environmental staff and the City of Lexington's Historic Preservation Officer, worked really hard to take a look at the limestone curbs and identify curb to leave in place, identify curb to relocate. And then when you relocate it, the problem is over the years, the limestone curb has been chipped, where it's been hit by snow plows or various other cars. And so it's been damaged. And so one of the techniques we looked at, we were trying to figure out, after we figured out where we were going to put it, the next step was, how do you build it? And I was actually on vacation in Charleston, and I saw that they had really beautiful curbs that were stone. And so I called the director, or one of the folks in Public Works, and they let me know that their key to success was not having snow plows. So we obviously won't have that benefit in our location, but it is important to gather on the advice that you have from other people that have dealt with this. At the time, there wasn't a lot of guidance in the state. There wasn't a lot of situations where they kind of reused limestone curb. And so we worked on details with the same group of people to flip the curb. And the middle picture shows kind of during construction. You can see it's a much nicer edge on the limestone curb. And the photo on the right is after asphalt surfacing on a piece of it. And so this was a very significant cost on the project. It was over $200 a linear foot. But at the same token, it was a very important and required as part of the environmental commitment with the federal funds used on the job. So as we think about limestone, the Legacy Trail, that's one of the elements of the project. And the picture on the left is the Gateway Monument at the Kentucky Horse Park. And the picture on the right is a gateway monument on the project corridor. And limestone is used differently in different parts, but it's obviously important for all of really central Kentucky. But the way limestone is used in downtown is used for curbs and building foundations. It's not used as much on rock walls. And so one of the things in working with the historic officer was to kind of use more modern materials and less limestone. And that was a design modification on the large gateway monuments. And then also, as well as the scale of those monuments shrunk a little bit to help better fit within the corridor. And this monument kind of sits as the gateway into the Legacy Trail on the 3rd Street corridor. So this is similar to the approach that we were already taking. The top left is from the feasibility study, and it's how the mile markers would have less and less stone and more concrete as you got into town. And now we only have 1 mile marker within our segment, and you can see it has obviously a lot more. It's mainly concrete, and versus the prior 2 monuments, there's pictures of those on the left. And they're also a little smaller scale. That was another thing, just kind of being in tune with the scale of the environment, of shrinking them just slightly. So this picture, the picture on the left is a monument and seat wall that's pretty much all stone out towards the Kentucky Horse Park. And the picture on the right is a transient showing the seat wall with a significant portion of it being concrete. The gateway monument, the mile markers. So again, just showing how the the difference in materials, and there's one of the embedded Legacy Trail medallions along the corridor. The intersections also had an enhanced concrete paving that was done that really kind of helped enhance them as well. Intersection improvements. So this is a before and after. It may be a little hard to see on the screen, but to give you a little bit of perspective. So this is a historic lyric theater at 3rd and Elm Tree, and they had done several years ago. They did an improvement project there, and really, you know, did a nice improvement to the facility. But it also included some paving right in front of their front door. And they were very concerned when we would meet them in this, I guess it was the pre-COVID world, where they were going to have big events and they needed to maintain access into the front doors. And so as part of the design philosophy, we took that into consideration. But then also, if you were walking from downtown, kind of at the page, there was an existing 10% cross slope. So from an ADA accessibility, they basically made that whole area one plane. And so it was a really steep slope through that whole area, so it wasn't ADA accessible. So what we did is we bumped the road in, and we basically took a paving line, saw cut out, and then we were able to provide the accessible route kind of on the new construction and minimize impact to this historic theater, which also helped them just from an operation standpoint for their facility during construction. Another improvement at the intersection was that, so basically 3rd Street, 4th Street actually used to be one-way streets in, I think, the 90s, and they were converted to two-way traffic. But when they did that, there was a coming northbound, the top picture, there was an existing wide median, and there was also a shared through left. And there was a pretty significant offset from southbound traffic. And so there was an accident history there, and the traffic engineering folks really wanted to remedy that. So as part of the modifications to the project, to the bottom right, we were able to remove the median, provide a dedicated left turn lane, and then we removed the dedicated right turn lane to do a bump out. But this allowed us to improve, reduce the offset between the two and provide dedicated left turn facilities, while also allowing the benefit of an increased pedestrian space along the edges. Keith, I'll turn it back over for construction update.
Thanks, Chase. We started this project in December of 2019, and as Chase said, we are getting ready to install the green bike lane starting Monday. So that's basically going to wrap it up. The project was a $4 million project. We're about $500,000 under budget, so we're able to save a lot of money. And Pace Contracting is our contractor, and they were able to complete it much earlier than what we had proposed. I think that was mainly because of COVID. The schools were closed, traffic was very mild, so they were able to close the streets completely, and that allowed them to work very fast. So we are very pleased with the way the project has come out. We're already getting a lot of positive feedback. People are very excited. This is just another link in our 22-mile network that we hope to be completed by 2022. So we'll probably have a grand opening sometimes in October, just to celebrate the completion of the Legacy Trail. And I did want to mention also that we do hope that the Legacy Trail will connect to Georgetown. They are working on a section. Currently, our project ends at the Scott County, Fayette County line, and we have, with the completion of this Legacy 3 project, we have 12 miles of trail. And I think that concludes our presentation. I guess we'll take questions. We're not hearing anything, so I guess you'll have to use the chat. Why concrete on the Brighton section?
Are you doing concrete pavement on Brighton Trail?
We did, yes. The Brighton Rail Trail is another trail on the east end of Lexington. And at the time that was constructed, we have about a mile of concrete. And that was when the asphalt prices were much higher. And actually, we were able to do it in concrete at a much cheaper price. Protected bikeways are great. I've ridden the Indianapolis Trail. Yeah, we would love to have had a protected bike path or a bike lane. The right of way was just too narrow. We were not able to get any kind of buffer or protection. In fact, there was one block, as Chase mentioned, that was less than the desired recommended widths.
Everybody moved it.
I'd say that's going to conclude our presentation. I don't see any more questions. Looks like there's a lot of conversations happening in the chat. It looks great. All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. I don't know if we can close out, or if KYTC can close out for us, or we just in now.
Yep. Wait.
It's going to end for us.